Hey guys, what's going on? It's Ben here, and today I'm going to be doing a video on the Philadelphia 76ers and some of their potential off-season moves. So as you guys might know, I have done videos on LeBron and Kawhi and Paul George and where each of them might go. And now I'm going to do sort of a flip of that and talk about the teams and what I think that they should do in regards to some of these players or some different players as well. So they're not going to be like the same video. They're going to be different, and I am going to explore the possibility of a combination of players going to certain places. So, for instance, if I were to do one on Los Angeles, the Lakers, I might talk about how they'd get 2 max free agents and not just 1, and if they might keep Julius Randle or stuff like that. But this one is going to be focused on the Philadelphia 76ers and what they might do in the offseason. And also, in addition to this, I'm not going to do part 4 of my 4-part series yet until the playoffs are over. It's supposed to be on the decade of the 2010s, and I've just figured since the end of the playoffs is about a month away, might as well just wait it out until we get to that point, and then I'll do that video after the playoffs are over, because then I can include this year, and instead of just having 8 years of data, I can use 9. And yes, it will only go through 2018, not 2019, but maybe I'll do an updated video next year at this time, who knows. But okay, back to this video. I'm going to be talking about the Philadelphia 76ers, some moves that they could do in the offseason that I think would be good, and yeah, just what the possibilities could be for them. So my main focus is going to be, first of all, on Kawhi Leonard, and second of all, on either the possibility of Paul George and LeBron James also joining Kawhi going to Philadelphia. Now, the only combination of these 3 guys that isn't possible is both LeBron and Paul George going to Philadelphia, because they don't have enough cap space to support both of those guys going. Now, they technically do, and there could be some sign and trades involved, but I don't think that either Cleveland or Oklahoma City would do the sign and trade, just because, or maybe Oklahoma City would, but definitely Cleveland would not. And because they're both unrestricted, I don't see that happening in the sign and trade scenario, just with this exact thing. So in this hypothetical, I'm going to act as if Kawhi is going to get traded, and then either they will sign LeBron or they will sign Paul George with the remaining cap space. So first of all, I'm going to go through the trade for Kawhi and how that would break down. So Kawhi's contract is for currently $18 million a year, and he has the chance to extend it this offseason and sign an extension that'd be worth around $40 million, I think, 35 to 40. But whatever team has him can sign him to that and not really worry about the cap, because they'll have his bird rights and they're allowed to offer the max. But so how it breaks down is, after looking at Philadelphia's salary cap and payroll, they are during this offseason going to have around $40 million in cap space, 35, 40, depending on how they manage some stuff. So that's basically enough for one max player, along with some minimum salaries. If people sign for the vets minimum. And so what I'm thinking is that, they might be a little more okay with going into the dipping into the luxury tax. So they'd be okay with sending less contract value to the Spurs, or like they'd be more okay with going in debt than the Spurs would be, because the Spurs have more debt currently. So I'll go through 2 trade scenarios for Kawhi that I have and how those might play out. So the first would be Kawhi getting sent to the 76ers in exchange for Markelle Fultz, Dario Saric, and Robert Covington. So those guys combined make $25 million, and so that's more than Kawhi's current contract is worth. So the Spurs would take on $7 million more in debt. They are already at about around 17 in the luxury tax, so they could take on this extra $7 million. but I don't know if they'll want to, and maybe they'll want Philadelphia to take on more of a financial burden, kind of as a payback. And so that's one scenario. And I think that, the Spurs obviously, the Spurs don't get great value in that, none of those players is a star right now. Markelle Fultz is really young and had a really bizarre rookie year. But, Covington and Saric, both really good guys, can both shoot it well and can help space the floor, which is what you really need in today's NBA. Both relatively young. Covington is 27 and Saric is 24. So they've both got a long careers ahead of them. And, if you plug them in with Fultz, let's say, as a starting point guard, and with Aldridge at the 4 or the 5, that's still a pretty decent lineup. You could be looking at like Fultz, Covington, Rudy Gay, Saric, and Aldridge as a starting 5 if you want to go a bit small. And if you still want Gasol to start, you could have one of the guys between Gay and Saric come off the bench. So yeah, there's a lot of possibilities there. And thinking about if San Antonio doesn't want to go into the luxury more, they could send Danny Green along with Kawhi. He's getting older. He's about 30 or 31. He's got $10 million on his contract. He's got 2 years left. So they could send him to Philadelphia. I think that they would welcome him there. Then the Spurs would be sending $28 million in salary, and the 76ers would be sending $25 million. So the Spurs would free up some money off of their books, get a lot younger, and get rid of this whole Kawhi headache. Now, all these scenarios are under the, I would say, context or the assumption that Kawhi can't work it out with the Spurs. So, I'm not factoring in, what if Kawhi and Popovich just work it out? Then this is all meaningless. Well, I'm going with the assumption that the Spurs decide that they have to trade Kawhi. Okay, so that aside, if you did that trade, then the 76ers would still be left with around 32, 35 million in cap space, and they could sign either LeBron or Paul George. And so first I'll start with if they get LeBron. I think that's really good, And I'm also going to go into the context that if they were able to also re-sign some of these vets that they have, such as Redick, Ilyasova, and Bellinelli, I think honestly that all those guys would be willing to re-sign for the vets minimum. They really overpaid Redick this year. He got $23 million, and I think he knows he's not really worth that much. And so I feel like if he signed for the vets minimum, he'd be making about an average of 11 or 12 over the 2 years, which I think is fair for him, and it's about what his value actually is. So I think that he'd be willing to go back for the minimum if he thought that they had a good championship chance. So let's say that you get LeBron in there. Your starting lineup would look like Simmons at the point, Redick at the 2, Kawhi at the 3, LeBron at the 4, Embiid at the 5, and then off your bench, your primary bench players would be Ilyasova, Bellinelli, Richaun Holmes, and TJ McConnell. I think that this is a pretty good team, The only problem is that LeBron and Kawhi both can't shoot it very well, and that creates a bit of a spacing issue. Also, Covington was a better shooter than Kawhi, so they get a little worse as far as shooting at the 3 position too, the small forward. But Kawhi can still shoot it fine, so that's still okay. But it's a good scenario, and I think they definitely improve a ton and would still be championship favorites. But I honestly like a situation where Paul George goes there over LeBron, and so let's go over that. Also, I forgot to include Danny Green would be one of their main players off the bench as well. But yeah, so there you go. So in the Paul George scenario, you would have a starting lineup of at the 1, Simmons, 2, Redick, 3 would be Kawhi. The 4 would be Paul George, which would be a bit of a stretch, But you know, he played the 4 a little bit in Indiana 2 years ago. Frank Vogel tried that out. It worked okay. Or actually, maybe it was a Nate McMillan thing. Nate McMillan tried it out with him at the 4 a bit just to play a faster pace. They did okay. He didn't play it all year, but you know, it was a decent effort. He's big enough to do it. He's 6'10". It says he's always 6'9", but it's one of these things where he actually lies about his height. He's actually 6'10", so he's plenty tall to play the 4. And honestly, the power forward these days, it can really be a small forward. You know, the position is changed the most of any position in the NBA. Kevin Durant is essentially a power forward nowadays, even though he's always been a small forward up until about 2 years ago. So I think Paul George would be fine at the 4, and then at the 5 you'd have Embiid, and off the bench you'd have the same guys: McConnell, Danny Green, Bellinelli, Ilyasova, Richaun Holmes. And this is the scenario where I think that Philadelphia could become a complete and utter dynasty, could easily challenge Golden State, and honestly, I think would be on the same level as Golden State. They might even be better, because I think you look at what 4 would you rather have? Steph, Clay, Durant, and Draymond, or Ben Simmons, Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Embiid? Honestly, I could not distinguish between those two. I think that, you know, I'd put about equal value on, let's say Kawhi and Durant are basically equal value, I'd say. You know, you can argue it, but I would say they're pretty equal value. Embiid and Curry, you know, similar value. I think that Curry's a bit better. But then when you look at Thompson and Draymond, I think that Paul George and Simmons are better than Clay and Draymond. Excuse me, allergies or something. But so yeah, you look at those top 4, really good. And then besides that, you got Redick, great shooter. Off the bench, you would have Danny Green, who's a great shooter. Ilyasova and Bellinelli, both great shooters. So they'd really be adapting to the modern game as well, in that they'd have tons of spacing, tons of good shooters. You know, Paul George is a way better shooter than LeBron. That's good. He's 4 or 5 years younger than LeBron. He's like 29 or 28 to LeBron's 33. And he's also taller and a better defender as of right now than LeBron. So I think between the defense and being taller and being a better shooter, honestly, it's nothing against LeBron. I think that right now LeBron's a better shooter, but I think you also have to think about like 4 years from now, who's going to be the better player. And you know, some people think that Paul George is actually already peaked, but I think that when he is 33 and LeBron is 37, that Paul George will probably be the better player. I never want to doubt LeBron, but I just by 37, it's really hard to still be at the top of your game. So I'm gonna think that George will be better. And I think by picking the younger player in George, you also extend the length that this potential dynasty could be. You know, you're making it 4 years longer by picking George over LeBron. LeBron has the ability to stay in his prime longer, as he's shown right now. But honestly, when you get up there like 34, 35, 36, it's kind of scary, and that at any point your game can just totally fall off. You know, I think Dwayne Wade is a great example of this. You know, he had a couple of years where he was averaging 25 and 20 with the Heat with LeBron, and then randomly, like 13, 14, he went down to averaging like 16 a game or 18. And in the finals, he only averaged like 14 a game that year. And then, my goodness. If you look at, let's say last year to this year, he went from averaging 18 points a game to around 8 or 9. Like, these older players can be really inconsistent, and their games can kind of just drop off out of nowhere. You know, in 2012 to 2013, Kobe averaged 28 a game, and the next year he averaged like 17 a game. And he had an injury that next year, but still, like, stuff can just randomly happen where you can just drop off. So that's why I like the Paul George option a bit better, is that I feel like you know what you're getting more. Whereas LeBron, it could be a boom or bust scenario where, like, one year he could be how he is this year and be an MVP candidate. But who knows? Like, what is to say that next year LeBron doesn't decline and go to averaging 25 and 5, which is still good and still around what Paul George would give you, but it would just show that he's on the decline, which I don't think would be a good thing. So I like the situation with Paul George a lot better, and I think that honestly, if you get Philadelphia with that lineup of Simmons, Redick, Kawhi, Paul George, and Embiid, with Danny Green and Bellinelli and Ilyasova coming off the bench, it's case closed. It's them and the Warriors for the next couple of years in the finals. The Celtics would give them a great fight, but I would say in the East it would be Philadelphia 1A. The Celtics would be 1B. So that's my take on that. That's all I got for today, guys. I just wanted to talk about that. I had heard a little thing in the news about the potential for this idea to happen, and I went on the ESPN Trade Machine and explored a bit of the scenarios with Kawhi. I'm thinking I'm probably going to do some of these in the future, like how I said in the beginning. I might do like a Lakers one with what would be their perspective and what might be their personnel changes. Because I think that it's cool to also look at the team's perspective and not just where the players might decide to go. Because how these teams balance their cap space is just as important as the player wanting to go there. So yeah, that's it, guys. I think that either scenario, if they get Kawhi and LeBron or Kawhi and Paul George, would be great for them. I just think that the Paul George one would probably be longer lasting since he's younger, which is why I favor that one. He's also a better shooter and defender, which are really important in today's game for spreading the floor, especially with Ben Simmons, who can't shoot it, so getting that spacing would be really important. So yeah, that's a little bit of a recap, but hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you next time. Bye.